Create, play, love. Hi, I'm Jessica Bose, and I am your breakup to breakthrough coach. I help people move through their breakup period so that they can experience clarity and joy again in their lives. And today we're going to be talking about grief. I'm learning as I'm talking to people how many people don't really know what it is. They do, but knowing it and then how to experience it. And so when I looked up grief on dictionary.com, it said that it's a keen mental suffering or distress over affliction or loss. It's sharp sorrow, painful regret. And some synonyms are agony, anguish, bereavement, despair, heartbreak, mourning. And so grief is a loss, right? It's a response to a loss. And that can come in many forms, and they talk about particularly death. But the death of a person is similar, grief can be similar in the response to a death of a relationship or the death of something that has happened. And different grief comes in different ways, but particularly with relationships and breakups, that is a death. Right? That is a death of a relationship. It's something that lived before when you were together and now it is no longer. And so even though that person may not have died, the relationship did. And so of course there's going to be a response to grief and loss. And there's pain that is involved in that. And many people have heard of the 5 stages of grief. It was created by Kubler-Ross. And she actually designed the 5 stages of grief around people with terminal illness. That's what it was developed for. And the stages are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Now, even though those are helpful tools to understand different parts of grief, they weren't designed to be in a linear form. I just read an article about that. Even Kubler-Ross was talking about that, I think, before she died. The intent was not a linear thing. And so even though there are different spaces and stages of grief, it's a tool to understand grief in different ways, but it doesn't mean that you will hit all 5 stages. There might be other stages in there than just those 5. And they can come at different times or all at the same time, or, you could be experiencing more than one all at the same time. It's not a linear thing, and there's not a right or wrong way to experience grief. And there's not a timeline with it either. I've gotten asked the question a lot, is how long should I be not over my ex? How long does it take to get over your ex? Well, there's no answer to that question because it depends on the person, and it depends how you let yourself grieve. If you do let yourself grieve, depends on how long you were together. There's so many variables. There's no answer to that question of how long does it take to get over your ex, because it's very dependent on lots of different things. But again, I just want to make sure that you understand that there is no right or wrong way to grieve. Everyone does it their own way. Some people eat a bunch of ice cream and talk trash about their ex and cry. Some people, there are so many different ways to experience it. But there are 4 different things that I advise people in when they are moving through that grief process. And the first one, always, I remind people to breathe. Often when we're having a high experience of emotion, we forget to breathe. When we're scared, we lose our breath. When we're angry, we get so heated that we tense up and stop breathing. And even when we're sad, it physically is harder to breathe because of crying. So breathing is really important when you're moving through these stages, when you're moving through grieving. And then allowing yourself to feel your emotions fully is imperative to the grief process. Because the reality is you're going to have lots of feelings. You might have experience of relief. You might have experiences of sadness or anger, pissed off, despair, anguish. There's so many different feelings that could come up, and many of them all at the same time sometimes. And that's perfectly normal. It is our nature to just disregard those and push them away and to avoid those feelings. But the reality is, those feelings will come up in ways somehow. And so until we fully experience that emotion, it's going to stay there until we do that. And so allowing yourself to just be whatever you are, sad, angry, and just like sit in it and express it and experiencing it. So for me, when I'm really sad, I cry, and I let myself cry, and sometimes I talk it out with someone, sometimes I write. There are lots of different ways to experience sadness. And I'm learning to experience anger better, but for me, just naming that I'm angry and then letting the thoughts fly out of my mouth, regardless of what they are, and not judging them or anything, just letting them out in a safe space, right? It has to be either by myself or with a person I trust that it's not affecting them. So I'm not angry with them because it's an unfiltered anger. Allowing that space to be angry in that way is definitely really, really helpful. And experiencing it until it's gone. Fully experiencing and expressing the emotion is super imperative to moving through your grieving process. Another thing that's really imperative is taking loving care of yourself. Taking loving care of yourself is so, so important always, but particularly when you're grieving. Now that looks different again for every person. For me, taking loving care of myself means making sure I'm not eating a bunch of junk food. I tend to shove my mouth with a bunch of sugar and things that are bad for my body. So I try to make sure that I'm eating better and good things for my body. Hi, Nancy. I also make sure that I have good people in my life that I can talk to. I'm a person who externally processes, so having safe friends that allow me the space to grieve and listen and hold space with me is another way that I take loving care of myself. And then sometimes I'll do things like take myself to the movies. That's actually really cathartic and helpful to me, and listening to music and writing, reading, exercising. Those are just some examples of how you could lovingly take care of yourself. And then while you're doing all of these things, making sure you don't have judgment around it. You know, a lot of times people have this judgment like, oh my gosh, I should be over him already because he cheated on me and fuck him. Like, no, it's okay that you're not over him yet. Like, of course you're not. You experienced a relationship together, and so being kind to yourself and not having judgment on your thoughts and feelings, that allows for that space to grieve. And then know that this comes and goes. There will be days where you'll be like, wow, I feel really good. I feel relief. I feel amazing about the idea that this relationship is over. And so I'm done grieving. And then the next day you'll be in a puddle crying again. Like, that's normal. That's part of the grieving process. And just allowing that space again with non-judgment is super imperative to that process. So if any of this is landing for you, please leave me a comment or a message. I would love to talk with you further about how to grieve. It is so important that we do allow ourselves to grieve, especially with breakups and with loss. When you do that, you can get through to the other side and be healthier, and it won't be as heavy. Like, and I promise you, whatever you're grieving right now, it won't be this heavy forever. And while the loss will always be there, you won't feel as heavy about it as you do right now. So like I said, if any of this is landing for you or resonating for you, leave a comment, message me. I would love to talk with you more about it. And I love you so much. You're not alone. Mwah.